And a very good afternoon, goeiemiddag Molweni. You are still tuned into Sakhisizwe Building the Nation, Bodi Nasie. So today we are diving deep into a critical topic that touches the lives of every South African, the fundamental right to access to justice. So the right to access to justice infringed in Section 34 of the South African Constitution means everyone has the right to have any dispute that can be resolved by the application of law decided in a fair public hearing before a court or, where appropriate, another independent and impartial tribunal or forum. So our guest today will help us unpack the complexities, challenges, and also hope surrounding legal support for vulnerable communities. So joining us as we explore how ordinary citizens can navigate the legal landscape, understand the rights, and also find meaningful support when they need it most. So in studio, I do have Masi from Pro Bono, and then on the line, I do have Mukhadeen from Heideveld Advice Office and Joanne Miller from Mitchell's Plain Advice Office. Just going to be assisting us a little bit more. So the lines are open. Do feel free to send through your voice note or your WhatsApp on 061-862-1065. And just let us know if there's anything you would like to know when it comes to the right to access to justice. So good afternoon, Masi. How are you today?
Hi, good afternoon. And good afternoon to your listeners as well. I'm good despite the gloomy weather. And you, how are you doing?
We okay. And then thank you very much, Joanne and Mukhadeen, for availing yourselves to speak to us today. So firstly, Masi, I'll start with you. What does access to justice mean for an ordinary person?
So I firstly think that it's quite important to note that unfortunately, due to people associating the right to legal services to be something that is expensive, something that is inaccessible, that many people do not get the justice that they deserve when it comes to their matters. And the law touches every aspect of our lives. So when it comes to the access to justice, it speaks about being able to enforce your constitutional rights in terms of the Constitution. And it goes from access to housing, to access to education, to access to water. You would not be able practically to be able to enforce the rights in the Constitution without having access to justice. So I think it's quite important to be able to be aware of your rights and also to be aware of how to access justice in order to ensure that you are able to enforce your constitutional rights.
And I agree with you because a lot of people don't actually know their rights. So how does our Constitution guarantee the right to access to justice? Has the legal landscape even evolved since 1994 to improve access to justice? Or is it just showing or presenting itself differently? Because, or this is my personal opinion, I feel we are still deprived from certain things and we are still in our, and I'm doing this with inverted commas, in our own little apartheid era, is just presented differently.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I think many people, again, feel that the Constitution is inaccessible, that the legal system and the rights that it protects is inaccessible. When we're speaking about whether our courts and whether our legal systems are accessible, I think first of all we should mention that yes, we have protections in terms of the Constitution and in terms of our law, right? But due to the fact that lawyers are very, very expensive, due to the fact that legal education is not something that is very accessible, and many people don't even know what to do to protect their rights. And also due to the fact that many people, because of the circumstances they're in, they don't feel that they are in the position to even enforce their rights. And I think if we look back to our history and how human rights have been violated throughout, there's definitely a relationship in between how we have not been dignified and by the way that the legal system has been operating, and associating to how many of our communities still do not have their basic rights fulfilled. But I do want to make it clear that, I'm really appreciative that there are forums such as this radio segment where people are able to firstly be educated about their constitutional rights and the rights that they deserve to have enforced. And the fact that there are also paralegals, community advice officers as well in communities where people can access that information and understand how can they enforce their rights. So I also would like to make mention that there are various platforms that are put in place to be able to make access to justice a bit more easier to reach. So, for example, the CCMA, that platform is a free platform where, as someone that is employed, let's say you were dismissed or there was an unfair labor practice, you are able to approach the CCMA in order to get the resolution that you're seeking without paying any legal fees. Also, when it comes to protection orders, so if you're being domestically abused or if you are a person that is facing harassment, you are able to proceed on that basis for free at your magistrate's court in your area. Also, when it comes to small claims court, if you're owed money and you want to get that money be paid back to you, that's a free forum. So there are forums that are free, but I don't think many people have the education about how to access those platforms. And I also want to make mention that sometimes the officials in these various platforms aren't always very helpful, or they're not really able to guide people as to how to go forward to enforce their rights. So it's not only education. Sometimes our community members do know how to go forward, but the system itself can be very slow and very frustrating in order to get the legal resolution that you're seeking.
Thank you very much, Masi, for that. So, Mugadeen, is there anything you would like to add on that?
Yes, access to justice is not just about having the access to certain organizations or institutions, but it's also about documentation. Because in certain instances, based on experience through our office, some people has been misled with having the proper documentation by certain clerks or officials at certain departments in government. So that is why we make it our effort so that we can have each and every document required by the community with regards to whatever legal matters or issues they might have, even if it's a challenge to the city of Cape Town with regards to municipal account issues. And then we assist them by filling in those documents so that they can have access and that the proper things can be done with regards to the issues. The same applies to when we assist people going to the Master of the High Court, because sometimes people are turned around and then they are being told this and that. And then we, as community-based paralegals, we know the process, we know what is required. And so we, as I stated, we see that we have each and every document required on behalf of the community so that they can have proper access to justice. And the one shortcoming in the area is maybe that most of the people does not know what their rights is with regards to the Constitution. So would like to promote that people or like government departments come out here and offer people workshops with regards to their rights as is prescribed in the Constitution.
And then Kadeen basically touched on a valuable point where they do assist people with the documentation by filing and how it needs to be filled out, as that is the biggest problem that people are faced with when it comes to resources. But what legal measures protect undocumented individuals who often feel they have no legal resources when it comes to this? Because like Mugadeen stated, like they do address and assist people by going through the whole process, but what about the undocumented individual?
So it's important to be aware that many of the rights that we find on our Constitution relate to everyone in our country. And I think that there's a misconception that those who are South African citizens have more rights or are entitled to more rights compared to those who are undocumented. That's not necessarily the case. And because the Constitution enshrines that everyone has the right, then it's important to be aware that if you are undocumented in this country, obviously it's important for you to follow the proper procedures for you to become documented. But if you are, for example, an asylum seeker, someone that is running away from war in your country, or maybe there's political issues in your country, that there are some measures that need to be put in place whilst you are seeking that asylum seeker permit in South Africa. And doesn't necessarily mean that you now should be denied housing, or you should be denied access to education or access to healthcare for that matter. So even though it's a situation you are undocumented, as long as you're making or putting measures into place to try to become documented, then it's important to be aware that you do have some protections as per our constitution, because we all are deserving of basic human rights and we all are deserving of human dignity at the end of the day.
And then we just have a few WhatsApps also, so I'm just going to play that.
So I was basically denied the right to public transport in a sense. I know recently we, for example, in the northern suburbs, right, and Coles River, Yes River and places like that, we don't have stuff like your My City bus, and Golden Arrow doesn't really go through there except through from Belleville. And it's just the idea that there isn't that transport for us, because we also need transport. Not everyone has cars. Not everyone wants to take a taxi. Yes, there's taxis, but there's people with kids, there's people, the older community as well. And we've been asking for a long time for buses, for My City bus even, because why is it that why is it only in the CBD? There is literally other communities, there's literally other people. So that was what I was denied. And for me, I would like answers to know why I was denied, as well as just to get more information, because there is other people besides people in the CBD. There is other people besides people living in Sea Point and Camps Bay, because they all have cars. Why do they need My City buses?
So, Masi, would you like to answer that?
Many people are aware that we live in a city that contains two cities. So you've mentioned your Cliftons, your Camps Bay, where services that does not necessarily should be provided to those who are the wealthy are easily accessible to them. And those who are able to afford can live in the city center, can afford to access the services that are in the surrounds of the city center. And if we make mention of our past, this would relate to spatial apartheid, where you'd find that on the outlying areas of our city center, you'd find your Kailichas, your Mitchell's Plain, your Elsie's River. And many people have to travel far just to get to work, or far to just get to the Department of Human Settlements, Department of so on and so forth. So I think what we should be aware of, that's the context that we are living in. And that is, to a certain extent, a political issue, because our city and our mayor and our local government needs to be aware of how many of our people are struggling to access the city and access services in order for people to be able to live dignified lives. But at the same time, if we're going to speak directly to your issue as the listener, I do think the ward councillors should be contacted and petitions should be made in order for this issue to be made a greater issue, so that those who do have the power understand how should this issue be addressed in order for the inequality and for the tale of two cities to no longer be an issue that we continue facing.
Definitely. So I'll just play the next listener. So Mugadeen, maybe you can take this one.
Hey guys, so in my situation, so this is what happened. I went to the Mowbray police station because Mnandandi Rojiwe, and then the service was nice and everything, and they gave me this small note where they told me I should scan and then scan it on my phone and then rate their service, and I did that, which their service was perfectly fine. You know, most when you are traumatized and you just go to the police to report your case, they were very comforting and everything. After rating the service and everything, like I did that, their service was really perfect, guys, and then after that, like I went there because I didn't receive a call. I went there to check, like, what's happening with my case. I haven't received anything. Like, they know I lost my phone, and then I gave them details of my relatives and friends so that they could call in case they need me. And then, like, I didn't get anything. When I went there, the person who's handling my case, the lieutenant, he was not there. Apparently, he's on leave. So, what must I do now as a South African citizen who's in this situation? What am I supposed to do when they tell me, Uba, the person who's currently handling my case is on leave? So that's how I lost my phone. Like, I didn't get any response, nothing. Kanjalo ke sana.
So, Mugadeen, would you like to touch on that one? Because I think that happens a lot where you find yourself in a sticky situation and the police station is your first resort that you go for assistance, and they not able or they don't actually help you the way you expect them to help you. So how do you navigate through that? Like, what are you as a citizen supposed to do if you don't get the service from the people that's supposed to help you? Mugadeen?
First of all, there is a station commander at each police station. So if the service is not up to standard or not satisfactory to a person, then you have the right to actually complain to the station commander of the current police station or actual police station where you shall complain. If they're not actually satisfying you, then you can also write a letter to the provincial commissioner, and if still no satisfaction, can then call into IPIT, because they do internal investigations with regards to police operations and such things, and especially if there is corrupt cops around. So the process is, firstly, if you have provided them with the proper information, such as maybe your IMEI number, any documentation with regards to your cell phone, and then they've opened up a docket and make you a case. Then you must also report to your service provider, which will give you a reference if you do have any insurance to claim such insurance. But if it comes to police work, yes, process is lodge a complaint to the station commander. If you're not satisfied, you can go to your provincial commissioner, or after that you can go to IPIT with a complaint. There's also a police ombudsman. It's a very easy thing to address your complaint to.
Thank you very much, Mugadeen. And then the next WhatsApp I'll give to Mitchell's Plain Advice Office.
I hope you're good. So my story is, back in 2009, fortunately, on my way home from school, I got robbed, and when I went to report it to the police station, the first thing they asked me was, do I know who the guy was and do I know where he lives? And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I just got robbed. There wasn't any sympathy. There wasn't any, it's okay, we'll take care of this for you. It was just the thing of, well, if you don't know this person, then how are we supposed to help you? And I was just so dumbstruck and so confused, because I was just like, is that not your job? So, yeah, I will never forget that. I was really traumatized and sad, and the police literally did nothing for me. The case wasn't even open, so yeah.
I think basically the same applies what Mugadeen basically stated there. So you take the same process there. And then another one states, my mother recently faced a frustrating ordeal while seeking child maintenance. After successfully filing at the Khayelitsha court, she was assured of receiving payments the following month. However, when the payments didn't come through, she was sent back and forth between the Khayelitsha court and the High Court in Cape Town. So with no resolution, despite her persistence, it took multiple trips and her insistence on receiving proper assistance before she finally received the help she needed. Masi, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. This is definitely a common issue that we find in many communities, and I think this could be attributed to where, yes, people know what to do to move forward, but they are not being met with the service delivery that they expect to obtain at the various institutions that they go to. So that is the unfortunate part about that. I'm glad that in the situation there was resolve. I think for those who are seeking to apply for maintenance, what I do suggest, first of all, make sure that you have your income and expense statement. So all evidence pertaining to your income and all the evidence pertaining to the expenses that you have in relation to, let's say, your child or your own expenses if it's spousal maintenance. Thereafter, what I suggest is that if you are able to obtain information about where the father of the child or where your spouse is residing, you have that on hand, and evidence or details in relation to their job, so that can also be brought forth when you go forward in court. you go to the court, speak to the maintenance clerk of the court, who should be supported by the maintenance officer as well as the maintenance investigator. So again, when it comes to our laws, there are many persons put in place to be able to support you and to guide you and to help you to get the assistance that you need. But that's not always the reality. So this is again why I'm appreciative that there's platforms like this radio segment where we can give people some guidance. The paralegals in their various communities are also there to provide some assistance. As probono.org, we also be able to provide you with lawyers who will be able to assist you for free with matters such as maintenance. So you shouldn't be alone, and the resources are there. So hopefully you'll be able to seek those resources in order for you to get the resolution that you're looking for.
And you still tune into Sakhisizwe Building the Nation, Bodi Nasie, and thank you very much to the advice officers for availing themselves to be a part of this discussion. We still have Masi from Pro Bono in studio, so I'm just going to give the last WhatsApps to Masi. The listener is saying, I would just like to find out, or if this happens again, as to what to do. So in May 2018, I was working at the well-known retail store where when I was packing up and leaving to go home, one of the managers cornered me on the stairs and forcefully kissed me. So I never went back again as I was violated, and I didn't know what to do or who to report to because they were the one of the people that handle such cases. So if something like this ever happens again, what can I do? Because it was not fair that I had to leave my job in fear of him.
Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry that that's something that you went through. Sexual harassment is something that is absolutely unacceptable, but again, it is something that we see very commonly. And in those situations, if you are facing sexual harassment in the workplace, first thing that you should do is approach HR. Now, it's a situation where some workplaces don't have a HR practitioner or HR department, so you feel stuck and you don't know how to resolve the situation. If you have a line manager or supervisor, you speak to them, and you also record things. So you maybe put in writing what was discussed, have a little notebook, or ask if you can record the conversation. And if that doesn't resolve the situation, and if your workplace is not taking the situation as seriously as it should, then you are open to go to the CCMA to report the matter, because sexual harassment is absolutely unacceptable in the workplace, and that person should be held accountable for their behavior, and your employer has a responsibility to protect you. So if they fail to do so, they should also be held accountable for failing to protect you in your workplace.
Thank you very much. And then here's another voice note.
The thing I experienced about Home Affairs was when I washed my ID off, because I had the book back then. I think it was in 2019. So when I was washing like my work clothes, because I was working at a dusty place, so each and every day I had to wash my work clothes separate from the other clothes. I didn't know that the ID was in the bag. Like, I just forgot to remove it, to take it out. Then I went to Home Affairs on the 2nd of January, very nice and quiet. And then I did everything. I was done, like I paid, even got the message that it will take so many weeks. And so, boom, January gone, February, first week gone. And mind you, the first week was my birthday. And I was like, does it take like more than a month? What's wrong? What's going on? When I got there, I was told that it's written on the system that it's lost. And I was like, how can it be lost? It's not lost. Here's my ID. Looking like what? And here's a copy of my ID. I don't know what else that I showed. And I told them that it's not lost. It's just that it's damaged. So now I'm applying for the smart card, because we were already told that it's the season of smart cards already. And then they were like, oh, okay, then they will have to update it. So I literally waited for 12 months. When I got there, I didn't want to communicate with them in a proper way. And then eventually, I don't know, after 2 months when I got there, the security guards already knew what I was looking for. And then I was told, okay, it's ready for collection.
So that is an issue with Home Affairs when you are applying for your documentation. And I think Mugadeen earlier touched on the documentation process, how they also assist individuals that's coming through their doors with questions around documentation and so forth. So I think it is important to address this issue, as a lot of people complain about the services that is rendered by Home Affairs, coming down from the long wait firstly, and then the service that is delivered from the staff that's unfriendly, or the way they are treating the people. It's very inhuman, because after all, we are all human, so we feel we need to be treated with respect the same way you would want us to treat you with respect. And then you also do have the situation where you are sitting there after you've waited how long, or like now it's winter, the queues are from the morning already, and you are left out in the cold. And I see in Bellville they make provision for the older people or disabled people, or if there's a baby, to come in before everyone else, which is understandable, and we appreciate that. But what about the other people that are standing there in long queues, not getting the service that they would want in that sense? And then finally, when you get to the kiosk or where the officials are supposed to assist you, they are having conversations. You basically sit there waiting till the conversation is done so that they can assist you. So I think those are some of the issues that people are angry about or want information, like how do you work around that? And the same with the listener that speaks about the ID and didn't get the service that she wants.
So the unfortunate reality is I really don't have a clear answer to that. And the reason why I'm saying that is that even as lawyers, we have to navigate these various institutions in order to represent our clients and in order to assist those who would like to get their legal issues resolved. And it's funny because you would think that because you have the title of a lawyer, you would be the one that's going to be able to go through these processes as easy as possible, and you would be able to raise your voice and everyone bows down to you. But you know how our government officials are. So it's a situation where it seems that there's a complete apathy.
The next question actually follows on that. So if you can maybe answer it all together, like you spoke about, throwing your weight around, and that happens a lot, especially when they are not getting the help from Home Affairs, for instance, or even the police station, and you've mentioned government sectors. So sometimes individuals are being denied the essentials to documentation, and it also comes down to a power trip, because I have more power than you as an ordinary citizen. Like, how do we address that? Because at the end of the day, you are rendering a service to the community. So there shouldn't be a level where you feel you are higher than the other one, because otherwise we could have dealt with the problem ourselves if that was the situation.
So the procedure would be to escalate the matter. So have a record of what has happened on that day, put it in writing, speak to witnesses who saw the lackluster service. If it's in the police station, you'd speak to your station commander, or you'd report to IPID, which is basically a body that investigates the complaints of the public when it comes to the police. If it's at the hospital, the manager of the hospital. Every institution has a manager, and you can escalate the matter to the manager. We as lawyers do the same thing. We escalate matters to the manager of whatever institution. Does it get resolved? Not all the time. There are legal procedures that you can go forward with. So there's a specific field of law called administrative law, where if a decision is made or a decision is not made by a government institution or government official, and it's impacting upon your ability to enforce your rights, then you can go to the courts in order to see how you can get that particular issue resolved. the courts tend to entertain the case if it impacts or infringes on quite a serious right as well. And I also think it's important to make note that even when there's no decision made, so let's say, for example, where you are awaiting the outcome of your asylum seeker permit and you have not gotten anything for months on end. In those circumstances, you would be able to approach a court in order to get that decision reviewed in terms of administrative law. But lawyers are expensive, and not many people are able to access a lawyer. And again, it seems that our government institutions have this complete apathy. But hopefully, if we all are able to rise up and bring our concerns to the fore and make it clear that we will not accept subpar services, because I know some people think, this is the norm. There's nothing that we can do to change how our institutions run. That's how they believe that they can continue having these power trips and trying to make us belittle us, even though we're trying to access basic services. So I suggest if it's a situation where you try to escalate to the manager, get in touch with a paralegal, with pro bono.org, with university law clinics, see if they could be able to assist you to get a little bit further in order for you to get the resolution you're looking for.
And I think that is the biggest problem, because people feel if you are a lawyer, you are hotshot, so you can just walk in any building and just demand authority like the world to stop and serve you. And that is how the public normally sees it from the outside. And the fact that you've mentioned that people are, nothing is going to happen. It's mostly our older people that feels like it's no use for me to complain. It's not like things are going to be resolved. It's more the younger generation that are more vocal by speaking out about these things or demanding answers when it comes to this, because you will see a protest occurring in 5 minutes if my voice is not heard. And we tend to destruct things, vandalize things, because we feel that is the resolution for our voices to be heard. And that is also a violation when it comes to the human right, because there is a right that clearly states if you do it peacefully, you're allowed to protest. And this is the tricky thing when it comes to human rights, that people have this misunderstanding. Yes, I have these rights as a South African, so this is how I can use these rights and nothing is going to happen to me. But there is limitations to it, and it is important that we know about these things. So many people also believe legal help is only for the wealthy, like you stated. But how can individuals access free or low-cost legal services? Because I don't think they always know where to go when they find themselves in a situation or how to navigate this situation.
The first thing I want to do is I want to touch on what you mentioned, where you said that basically there's quite a lot of frustration, a lot of anger in relation to how we are not getting basic services fulfilled, where our constitutional rights are not being respected. And I think that frustration and that anger is warranted. I think there's reason for us to be angry. I think there's reason for us to be frustrated. Considering our past, where we have been discriminated against during apartheid, and we expected in the democratic dispensation that would be treated with dignity and respect, and that's not necessarily the case. It is something that would make people angry and would make people frustrated. As a lawyer, I would recommend that you follow the lawful ways to be able to resolve your situation or your issues. And there are many ways to do so legally. And whether it's protest, because protest is a legal way for you to be able to make your voice heard, as long as you're not destructing anything or destroying anything. If it's a situation where it requires legal support, you can go to pro bono.org. I'll just quickly give the contact details as well.
Yeah, I actually want to know, what financial or personal circumstances would qualify someone, firstly, to receive the free legal support from pro bono.org? What practical steps should they take? What documentation or proof is typically required?
Sure. So let me just finish the number quickly, just for those who are writing it down. So our number is 087 470 0721. I'll repeat it, 087-470-0721. So essentially what probono.org is that we are an NGO, so we're not connected to anything related to the government. And we are basically the bridge between those who can't afford legal services and also the private legal sector. So the private legal sector is there to do pro bono work. They are required in terms of the law. But many of the lawyers in the private legal sector do not know how to be able to do that work by getting in touch with community members. So we are able to be the ones that consult with community members, make sure that we are able to see which matters are strong in prospects and which ones aren't. And those that are strong, we take further to the private legal sector so that those lawyers can assist on a pro bono basis. When we're speaking about what qualifies people financially, so we do have a means test where if you are earning less than 7,500 Rand, we will be able to assist you. Now, I know that in today's day and age, 7,500 Rand is nothing. And those that are earning 10,000 Rand, even 20,000 Rand, if you have a family, that is nothing. That goes very quickly. So what we do is that we look into the circumstances of your case and we determine on a case-to-case basis. So I think it's important for me to also make clear that unfortunately legal services aren't guaranteed because these are private lawyers that are offering up their time and their expertise. So if they have the availability, then they'll be able to take on your matter. But if it is a situation where you do qualify and we are able to find a legal practitioner or lawyer who will be able to assist you, it will take you so much more further in order for you to exercise your rights.
So at the end of the day, don't get discouraged based on your salary bracket. Firstly, reach out to the probono.org and you will basically tell the people or assist the people to say, we can help you or we can't, and then do referrals. So just repeat the number again.
So 087-470-0721. I also would like to say that we don't work in isolation. There are many, many other organizations in the civil society sector. So you can contact paralegals in your very community who are there to support you. You can go to the various universities, UWC, UCT. They have law clinics, URC College as well. You don't have to feel like you are alone. There's shelters that have legal support and counseling in order for you to be able to see how you can get the assistance that you need at court.
Like, how do the language barriers impact access to justice, firstly? Because I think there's that miscommunication when you do go into the government, because they do have the entity pencil that's supposed to come in and intervene when there is language barriers, and most of the government sectors does not have that. So what happens in a situation where you go into a facility and there is this language barrier? We're not able to communicate because you are not willing to get someone to understand what I'm saying or to communicate to me in my language, because, you know, our older people, if you grew up Afrikaans and I'm going to explain something to you in English, you're not going to understand clearly what it is that I'm saying, or when I need to express myself, I'm not able to communicate with you because you don't understand what I'm saying.
So, in situations where you feel that you are not able to get someone to speak to you in the language that you understand, the first thing I would suggest, again, try to see if you can escalate the matter. So I think there's a difference between where there is a lack of understanding and being able to communicate because there's no resources with that particular institution, and just an unwillingness. And if there's an unwillingness, I think that this is even more problematic. So escalate it to the manager in that particular facility. To my understanding and in my experience, when it comes to those who are Afrikaans speaking, Xhosa speaking, it's not usually the biggest train smash. Usually there would be someone in the institution that would be able to speak that particular language. But I've noticed that when it comes to people who don't speak those languages, or let's say, for example, you are someone that has a hearing impairment, that makes it even all the more difficult. So yes, the responsibility is not on you to be able to communicate with those that are in government who are supposed to provide you service. The first step is, if you are able to find someone that can assist with interpreting, that's just going to make things so much easier for you. But if you're seeing that there's unwillingness and that there's that power trip that we spoke about, then I think that it's even more important for you to see how you can escalate the matter in order for it to be resolved.
And just in conclusions, in your last word, it is very easy for us to use Google, and this is what Mugadeen also stated, but all that information can be very dangerous to make sense of, as if you don't know what it is that you're really looking for. But how can community members educate themselves about their legal rights and just to equip themselves about knowing their human rights firstly?
So if it's a situation where you have to go to court and you have to find information in relation to your rights at court, ask the clerk of the court. The clerk of the court is there to support you and to help you. And the unfortunate thing is that many of our people do not have a positive experience when dealing with government officials, whether it's the clerk of the court, whether it's at Home Affairs. And I do think it might be related to the fact that many of these government officials are overburdened with work, but that doesn't mean that they aren't there to help you and they aren't there to assist you with what you need help with. So that's the first step. But beyond that, I do think, again, the civil society sector has a lot of resources where you'll be able to get the information that you're looking for. And sometimes people are a bit nervous to go out to ask questions because they feel that, I'm not so sure if this is a case or not, so I'm not going to go out and ask questions because I don't want to waste your time. No, these various places are there to assist you and to educate you about your rights. So go to the community advice offices, go to places like Pro Bono or go to university law clinics, even if it's a matter of just asking questions, because you never know. Maybe you thought that your matter was not a big deal, but you find out that actually there's a right that's being contravened at the end of the day. So ask questions, remain inquisitive, and be prepared to fight for your ability to navigate our society in a dignified way.
That completes our Tuesday session of advice and pro bono, giving advice on your human rights. So again, if you want to reach out to pro bono, you can go via probono.org, or alternatively, you can contact them on 087-4700-721. So access to justice isn't just a legal concept, it's a human dignity, equality, and also the promise of our constitutional democracy. So every South African deserves the opportunity to understand and define their right, regardless of their economic background or societal status. So again, to our listeners, know your rights, seek help, and you